Hello, everyone. Welcome. You're welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar is the second webinar for week 2 for the CBO NGO focus. We had the first webinar on Monday, and today's webinar is going to be the second one, and on the topic, guiding theory of change. So you're welcome. We are not in the wrong place. We are here for you. We're just going to give an additional 1 minute for more participants to join. So we'll have a full house, then we begin. But for the meantime, welcome, and you can use the chat option to introduce yourself, where you are joining from. So our presenter, who you can see is with us, can also get an understanding of the demographics of the scholars that are present. So welcome, we're glad to have you here. Great, welcome, Hilda. You're welcome, Claude. You're welcome. We'll be starting in a very short time. We just want to give a little time for more participants to join, and then we'll kick off officially. Today's webinar is the second webinar for week 2 for the CBO NGO focus group during this academy. So the first webinar was on designing a mission statement on Monday, and today's webinar is on the guiding theory of change. So if you are here for this webinar, don't worry, you're in the right place, and we are glad to have you. So I'll start right about now. Yeah, I'm happy to be here too, Claude. You're welcome. All right, so my name is Success Eugene Odremenam, as most of you would know, and WMI's Leadership Skill and Development Coordinator. And today I'll be moderating this session for the guiding theory of change. And we have our presenter here with us. Our presenter is Solomon Mugabe, and even though he's joining us from the US right now, he's a Ugandan. So I can see in the chat we have a few Ugandans. So Solomon is from Uganda, and he's an Angel of Africa awardee. He's an Africa Visionary Fellow and perennial fellow who believes that every person has an innate ability to create the change they want to see and make the world a better place. As a social worker, Solomon has over 10 years experience working with both local and international agencies, having served in high-level positions in the field of skill development with Educate, USAID, Feed the Future, and as Ugandan Youth Advisor to Washington, D.C. through the U.S. Mission in Uganda. As the Wezesha Impact co-founder and executive director, Solomon also serves on different boards of organizations, which has enabled him to build his competence in the area of leadership and development. As a leader of social change, Solomon continues to learn more about community and systemic challenges and proactively engages with initiatives that are working to address these challenges. He believes in unlocking the ability that lies in every human to lead change. And it's of great honor that we have Solomon here with us to still talk on this very interesting topic on the guiding theory of change. So Solomon, you're very much welcome. Before I hand it over to you officially, I just want to say to our participants, we are here for you. Please, if you have comments, you have questions, feel free to use the Q&A section and to use the chat to let us know your thoughts, your concerns, and we'll be glad to attend to you throughout the course of the presentation. So, Mr. Solomon, the floor is all yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Success. I really appreciate the warm introduction. When you introduced me, you mentioned my name, Mugambe, and it sounded like Mugabe. Yeah, I know from Nigeria, it's probably Mugabe. I'm really excited to be here, and again, thank you so much to World's Mountain Initiative for inviting me to join this great session, and as well uh, be a facilitator of learning in this session. Thank you, Success and Fred and the whole team for organizing such great learning opportunities for the change makers from the different parts of the continent. I'm really excited to share with you all about the theory of change. It's something that is very important to all of us, but over the years, I've also seen it as a very important tool that every leader and every person who either is looking at starting or has started an initiative should really have. Like Success mentioned, I have been a part of, I mean, I'm a part of different institutions, and I'm happy that I've been able to contribute to success of these different initiatives, all with the goal of really transforming the African continent and making the world a better place. Welcome to the Ugandans who are here. I see some names that seem Ugandan, and I believe that they are probably from Uganda. So happy to see you, my brothers and sisters, and everyone else from every other part of the world. Thank you. Yes, I am happy to start with the presentation. Success and team. We'll do I think we'll start with the very first slide. Yes, thank you. Again, it's exciting to be talking about this topic of theory of change for community-based organizations and nonprofits. Oftentimes, the theory of change is also related to the logic framework or the business model, if you think about it from the business side. And and I just want to bring up that background so everyone understands that if we meet those words along the way, we do not get confused. Um, as leaders who are looking at creating change, there is always that journey that you will always map out on how you are going to create that change and how that change is going to be achieved. So uh, in simple terms, when you think about the theory of change, it's basically that journey. Like, how are you? I mean, you are looking at this change, you have this ambitious goal, you have this big transformation you want to cause in your community, but how are you going to cause it? How are you going to bring about that transformation? So oftentimes when technical people talk about this word theory of change, it all gets us to like, oh my God, that's maybe a statement from the experts. It's a complex thing. But I'm here to first of all tell you that it's not complex. It's basically the idea of how you are going to achieve the change that you want to achieve. And this applies to every project that you want to do, every kind of CBO that you want to start, every initiative that you want to start. It always has that journey on how you're going to achieve that change that you want to create. So as I present, I will do present maybe about 2 or 3 slides, and then I'll open it up to questions. And then after answering some questions, I will then do another maybe 3 slides and then open it up to questions. So please, if the question comes up, kindly write it down, and I'll just make sure that I give an opportunity for people to ask questions as we proceed through the presentation. Okay, next slide, please. So when we think about a theory of change, I know that as leaders, some of you have taken time to read about this, but I want to just share kind of a simple definition. And this is not like a scholarly definition, but a simple definition for all of us to really understand this. So when we think about a theory of change, uh, some people will just write it as a document. From the day they've written it, they just write it, they hire a consultant, they put it together, and then they file it. But the theory of change is a living document. And it's not just supposed to be like information written in a document and stored somewhere, but it's something that has to be referred to every time. As part of this definition says, it is a dynamic and evolving framework. And when you say dynamic, it means it can change. It can change. Sometimes you might be moving on this journey and you feel like, oh, but I think the inputs we anticipated would need are actually not enough. Maybe we need to add these inputs. So that then brings about a bit of a change or an edit into the theory of change. Um, and it also mentions that it articulates the causal relationships between inputs, activities, outputs, and then outcomes. So when we talk about relationship, it's how things are interconnected with each other. So for example, if it's inputs, maybe you need there's inputs around maybe training materials or books. Then activities could be if it's about an education program and you're looking at giving books to kids, then the activities, the input would be the books, and then the activities would be provision of reading materials to the learners, and the output could be learners receive learning materials, and then at the outcome level, you're anticipating that there will be improved literacy and numeracy of the learners. And then, of course, the ultimate intended impact of the initiative could be um, improving, graduation rates of learners from university. So there is that chain of the interconnected relationships between the different pieces of this journey as we look at achieving a certain goal. And like it says on this slide, that it is a roadmap to change. So in other words, for anyone to cause change, you have to clearly define a roadmap, define that journey. How are you going to move from a situation where there's poor sanitation in the community to a situation where everyone is healthy and lives in a healthy community and has great sanitation in their community? So there is that journey that you have to move. So the theory of change will basically describe that roadmap on how you're going to create that change. Next slide, please. So when we think about again the theory of change, there are key pieces that we have to pay attention to. First of all, the intended impact. And when you think about the intended impact, you have to be able to clearly define the who. So who are you targeting? Which population are you focusing on? Are you targeting to work with children? Are you targeting to work with women? Are you targeting to work with the elderly? So who are you intending to work with? So that's a key question that you have to ask yourself as you think about impact. And then the second thing is, where will your organization do its work? So, are you intending to work with the youth in maybe Central Africa, or are you intending to work with the young people in your home district or your county? you have to be very specific about that. And then number three is the what. So specific outcomes. I mean, what is that you want to achieve? So if you're saying you want to work with the youth and you want to work with them in your community or your county, then what change do you want to cause with them? What outcomes do you want to see as you work with them? So that piece defines what we call impact. And going back to our theory of change, it really describes the how. How will your organization achieve your intended impact? So the change that you again want to create, you've defined it well, looking at the who are you focusing on, where will you be working, what outcomes are you focusing on, and then finally you're looking at, okay, how am I or how is my organization actually going to achieve that intended impact? Thank you. Next slide, please. So after you really getting to understand the whole background and the what around the theory of change, I would like to also share with all of you the why. I mean, yes, we've talked about the what it is, and the different components in the what. We've talked about the how, the who, I mean the where and the what, and then defining the roadmap to that. So now we are saying, okay, but why do we need it? Why do we really need it? So in other words, why do you need a roadmap to achieving your vision? I mean, somebody could say that, oh, maybe I just do it, and then I will find myself there. But just like any other journey, you have to be able to define how you're going to move from point A to point Z, or to point B, or to point E. So why do we need to define that? Why the theory of change? Why does it matter? Number one, it helps break down the journey from the vision to the reality. So oftentimes we have things we are reflecting on, and we think that, oh, I want to do this. But maybe because you've not really thought about the breakdown of that aspect, then you're not able to even turn it into reality. You might be looking at maybe something that is really too theoretical, that in reality you may not have even the resources, you may not have even the support system, the stakeholders might not be even there to support you to do it. And so the theory of change helps you define that. So bringing the vision into reality. And and also when you think about bringing it into reality, you're also breaking down this vision into manageable steps that you can take. And then at the end of it all, you are able to achieve that success that you want to. And so when we look at the different aspects, and I mean, with the theory of change, it empowers us to, number one, clarify the objectives. So what objectives are you having as a leader? What do you want to really achieve, and why does it matter? So clearly defining those objectives is a key aspect of why you need the theory of change. So this theory of change is not for only the big programs, like for USAID, like for DFID, like, I mean, those different big programs that everyone is looking at. It is for every program or every project or every initiative. And the second piece I would like to point us to is uh, the theory of change enables us to strategize effectively, because if you want to successfully implement your initiative, then you have to have a very clear strategy. You have to have a plan. How are you going to achieve that plan that you want to execute? Then the third aspect of why we need the theory of change is measuring progress. So you need to be able to clearly define your indicators, your metrics of success, and how you're basically going to be seeing that journey to success? I mean, what are those indicators? What will show you that you're actually on track? So the theory of change basically helps you. And also, as you think about that, you're also looking at, I mean, am I implementing the right activities I set out to implement? And if so, where am I going wrong? Why aren't I achieving the indicators that I expected to achieve? So those are key aspects. I mean, if we are to ask ourselves the why question. And then the other two things I would like to point out is the adapt and learn. So when you have the theory of change, you're continuously assessing and improving strategies based on the realities that come through. I mean, you might, for example, anticipate and say, if I give books to learners, then I will have improved the learning outcomes of the children. But maybe it's not true. Along the journey, you give the learning materials, you give the books, but nothing happens. Then you say, okay, oh, I'm giving them the materials, but maybe they need additional coaching to ensure that they actually succeed at their education and we improve the learning outcomes. So then you go and make some changes. But that comes through because you have a theory of change that helps you to adapt and learn. Then demonstrate impacts. So it helps you to communicate your story, the successes, the lessons learned to the stakeholders and anyone who is following the work that you are doing. So with that, I would like to just pause for a minute and just ask if anyone has any questions so far. Feel free to type your question in the chat. Um, we will be able to read it. Okay. So, thank you, Ofondo. I mean, you mentioned you have no question. Okay, that's great. So I will proceed. And again, if a question comes up, feel free to just write it in the, I mean, maybe in the chat or in the notebook so we can revisit that in the after next 3 slides. Okay, so I'm moving on to the next slide. So now that we've understood, okay, there's a question, maybe if I go on, I'll read this question from Maury Koroma. Your question is, for instance, where your theory of change is clearly defined, but you don't have the resources or stakeholders support. Okay, the way it's written, I will interpret it that as if you're asking on what you would do if you have a clearly defined theory of change and then but then you don't have the resources and stakeholders support. So Maury, if it comes to that, then you're able to actually assess on whether you should be able to continue to move that journey. That's number one. But number two, a key important question for you at that point is, how can I get the resources? Oftentimes we will start initiatives and it doesn't mean that you have the resources right up front. But then a key piece on this journey is also finding the resources. How can you get the resources? Who has the resources and who can you approach to give you the resources? Sometimes it could be from the community. It could be from your family. It could be from your peers, your friends. Maybe you need I'll give an example of, again, the learning materials. You need to give out books and you don't have the money to buy the books. So have you thought about reaching out to the community to do like a book um, a book drive where every family gives you like maybe one book, or people who have gone through school, you reach out to them and ask them to give you their books, and then through that you can collect different books. If you're looking at the issue of stakeholders support, you should be able to ask yourself that, okay, if I don't have support from the stakeholders and I need it, how can I secure this? I mean, am I able to set up an advisory committee that is going to just help me build out support from the different stakeholders? Or am I going to, first of all, learn from somebody who has secured 100% support from stakeholders to then guide me on how to do it as I plan out my initiative? So those are key things. And sometimes there might be instances where it's not working out. Then that's where you go back to the drawing board as a leader and review the initiative that you want to work on. Okay, thank you, Maury. I hope there's some bit of clarity to your question. All right. So as we are moving on, I would like to also share with you the key components of the theory of change. Um, a key issue that we also need to understand is that, again, a theory of change is not this document. I want to remind you, it's not a document that you just put together and just file. No, it's a living document, and these key components are critical at every step of the journey as you build out your initiative. The first piece of the component that you need to have as part of the theory of change are the inputs. So what resources do you need? What do you need in order to move that journey? What do you need to invest into your initiative? So all those needs, all those things that you need to start with, to input in order to facilitate that journey, are things that are comprised in the theory of change. So the inputs is a key piece. Then after the inputs, you should be able to define the activities, what actions you take using these resources to create change. So what will you be doing? So yes, you need these resources or you need these inputs. Then what activities are you going to undertake to use these resources in order to create change? I'll give like I shared earlier, that maybe the inputs you need books, or you need transport, you need airtime, you need the government in government, maybe government policies. So those are the inputs. And then activities, you're saying that you need, one of the activities to undertake maybe is to train teachers on the facilitation of these materials that you've brought to them. And then that takes you on to the next step of the outputs. So tangible products or services that result from your activities. So in doing the following activities or the different activities, what outputs are you looking at? What do you anticipate to come out of these activities? So that's critical. Then the outcomes. So the outputs would be more really short term. When I train the people, I as part of the output, it's 100 people trained. That's the output. Then the outcomes, if you train them in maybe uh, uh, preventing domestic violence, then as part of the outcomes, there's what they call the short-term and the long-term changes. And please mark the word changes. So it's not just like we trained and we trained, but what changes are you hoping to see in the short term and in the long term? So if you said you're training people on how to prevent domestic violence, as part of the output, you're saying 100 people trained in the prevention of domestic violence. The outcome here you're looking at is basically maybe a 10% reduction in the domestic violence cases or reduced domestic violence cases in my community. And the impact is basically maybe it's usually the overarching societal or systemic change. And systemic change, please mark that word. It's basically the high level change. So you're saying maybe happy families, or maybe happy communities free from domestic violence. So those are critical pieces that we have to note in the journey. And the assumptions is another piece where you're always saying that, okay, if this happens, then this is the assumption. Or we are assuming that if we train the people on how to prevent domestic violence, then we are able to achieve A, B, and C. So the assumptions as well. So if you're to think about the components, like what do I need to put into a theory of change? It's inputs, activities, outputs, outcomes, the impact and the assumptions as well. And I would like to just read this statement down that a theory of change is often represented using a logic model, which visually illustrates the causal links between each component. So these things are linked. It's a journey. And for sometimes you will see people putting arrows from the inputs, they put an arrow to the activities, they put an arrow to the outputs, then an arrow to the outcomes, then to the impacts. And usually there are issues to do with the assumptions. So if this, then what? If this, then what? So as leaders looking to creating initiatives, you should be able to define these pieces. And then when you define them, you're able to put them in a link or in a causal relationship or connect them. And then they lead you to the impact that you want to create. Next slide, please. So quickly, I would like to just go through, this is related to what I just talked about, but just giving a bit of more detail onto the whole idea of developing a theory of change. We've said that, yes, we'll need the inputs, we'll need the activities, we'll need the outputs, we'll need the outcomes, and then we need the impact and the assumptions. But as part of the journey, key things you have to understand is one, as a leader now, you're thinking, okay, what steps should I take to create my theory of change? And we've already highlighted the different sections. But I would like you to just know that the first thing you need to do is to identify the problem or issue, the stakeholder engagement. So who are you going to engage as part of the process? Who are those major players that you need in order for you to address that problem or that challenge? You should be able to define the vision and the long-term outcomes of your program or your initiative. Because if you're able to know that, then it helps you be able to understand the, the goals around it and make sure that everything is really specific, measurable, and realistic. And then number 4 will be for you to start working backwards. So begin with the long-term vision or the long-term outcomes, and then work backwards on what that journey would be. Consider the intermediate outcomes, the necessary conditions, and the different things that need to be done in that journey. And then number 5 is identifying intermediate outcomes. So what are those intermediate outcomes that will lead to the long-term outcomes? This should represent significant progress towards your vision. So in other words, as you're looking at this ultimate outcome, what are those things that you want to see along the journey that are actually getting you to the ultimate outcome that you're looking at. Next slide, please. Number 6 on what you have to be able to do as you ask yourself on, okay, how should I take the steps? What should I do now? Map out the causal pathways. Create a visual representation of the causal links between your inputs, activities, outputs, outcomes, long-term outcomes. So map out that journey, as I highlighted earlier. Be able to create create that linkage, that pathway, because it is the pathway. If you have it clearly defined, then you're able to actually execute and be able to achieve accordingly. Understand the inputs and resources. So be able to identify what, if I need funding, I need to secure this much. If I need staff, these are the kind of stuff I need. Do I need any special expertise? Do I need any special collaborations? That's critical as part of the development of the theory of change. Then define activities. So what actions are you going to undertake in order to achieve the outputs, the outcomes as well? Outputs, these are basically tangible products or services, or tangible results that will through when you execute the activities. So you should be able to, map out that, because these outputs are the ones that will connect you to the outcomes. Identify indicators. So what are those things that you'll be seeing along the way that will indicate to you that you're actually on your path to success? You should be able to define that. Then finally, there's the assumptions and the risks. So what assumptions are you having? What risks are you looking at? For example, from Maury's question, you talked about the idea of lack of the stakeholders' support. Maybe a risk that you anticipate is because, for example, in Uganda, I'll talk about Uganda, because you're looking at working with youth, maybe government will not support you as a major stakeholder, because there's this whole idea that when you engage youth actively, then you could be suspected to be into politics, or getting the young people to rally behind you and basically uh, speak ill about the government. So those risks. I'm looking at working with the elderly, but there's a risk. If I work with the elderly and maybe they're 90 years, but as I start to work with them, they pass on after like a year. So how am I going to handle that? So those assumptions and risks are very critical as you're looking at the theory of change development. Next slide, please. And I will pause it at that before I go into the example I wanted to share with all of you, just to get any questions. If there are any questions, I'm happy to respond to them at this point. And again, feel free to type the question in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah, Solomon, for now, we don't have any questions. But if there's any, I'll let you know. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So this is an example of a logic model, which again, like I say, ties into the theory of change. We've talked about inputs, activities, outputs, and then outcomes, both short term and the long term, and the assumptions down here. So I included this to share with us a very specific example. And this is something that I'm personally using as part of a program that we are running that we call the WISE program. So it's a Wezesha Impact Skills and Enterprise program. So when you look at the inputs, you will see there's funding, there's project staff, there's volunteers, there's business mentors, there's technical support, community support, and for us, those are the inputs. And when you go and get to the next level of the activities, you will see that we have the sensitization of government and civil society leaders on the program. We have sensitization of vocational training centers administration. So those are activities that we have put together that we have to do on this journey as we work towards achieving our ultimate goal of the impact that we seek to create. And once we implement those activities, under the outputs, we have the number of government agencies or MOUs signed. So as we look at the activity of sensitizing government and civil society leaders, an output from that for us is signing of MOUs with the different government agencies. And when we look at the sensitization of vocational training centers and the administration, our key output there is the number of vocational training centers administrators sensitized. So those are the outputs. So inputs, activities, and then the outputs. Then moving forward, we are looking at, okay, the outcomes level. And we are saying that if we did that, then the outcome we are looking at in the short term is the percentage increase in the enterprise startup survival and growth by the youth. Because when you look at the different activities down, you'll see that we are doing all this to ultimately get the young people be able to start their own enterprises. So in the short term, we are looking at an outcome of the percentage increase in the enterprise startup, survival, and growth by the youth. And then moving on to the long term, ideally, which we could also refer to as the outcome, is the percentage increase in youth employment and improvement in their livelihoods. So you'll see that we have already mapped out what we need at the first level of the inputs, what we need to do, and if we do that, what will come out as a result immediately, what will be the immediate uh, output, and then the outcomes, what outcomes will come through in the short term and in the long term. And then the assumptions, we are saying that stakeholders are willing to participate and support the programs. And the other assumptions as you read. So it's that journey that we have mapped out. And we think that as Rosacea Impact, if we follow this journey, if we follow this logical flow, if we follow this theory, this roadmap, then we are progressing towards achieving the goals that we are looking at achieving. Next slide, please. So after defining that journey, a key aspect that will usually come up is that, yeah, we have the theory of change. How is it applied, and how is it applicable, even externally, away from even just within the organization? Oftentimes, the theory of change will basically be referred to in the design, planning, and development of programs. So agencies, even like the World's Mountain Initiative, will often use it as part of the program design and the outcomes, and as well as other organizations. So as a leader, the theory of change is critical because then you are able to use it for that. It will help you just for the key performance indicators for you to be able to know, okay, what are these KPIs that I need to define along the way? Baseline data collection, because this is part of the theory of change, then you'll be able to capture that data, and that will inform you on later on how much progress you have made following the implementation. And then key thing is that if you have the theory of change, it's oftentimes applied when you're doing the implementation, monitoring and evaluation, data collection. So when you hear organizations doing external evaluations or internal evaluations of their impact, the first document they will always ask for is, where is your theory of change? So it is a basis. They will always refer to it as they do the evaluations and as they assess the implementation of your programming. And then the other key thing, if we talk about the application, is the analysis. How are we, scoring? How are we achieving as per our promise? So the theory of change is able to get you to tick off those boxes as well. And whoever is actually assessing your program will be able to analyze whatever they're analyzing your success, analyzing your progress by looking at your theory of change. Yeah, so I'll move on and we'll finalize. Next slide, please. Well, I think I dropped a bit. Um, so now that we've gone through the theory of change, the different parts of the theory of change, I would like to just give us a practice as the leaders who are ambitious, planning out different programs, planning out different initiatives. I would like to share this template with you all. So as you work towards your initiative, you're able to clearly map out the theory of change. So this tool has the different questions and the different sections of the theory of change. So
Seems like we lost our presenter again due to connectivity issues. But yes, this is an exercise we're meant to do, and we can start working on it before he joins us back again. So as we can see the screen, using the steps that he's led us through, we can start designing our own theory of change using these templates. And anyone who sends in their own theory of change will analyze it first, and then we'll just keep doing that so everyone gets a hang of exactly what we're talking about. So it's an activity that I think we should be working on right now. Welcome back, Solomon. Yeah.
Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. So as we get to the next slide, I am requesting that if anyone has a question, please feel free to ask the question, because we've come to the end of our presentation. I want to mention that as leaders, again, we cannot do things without a clear direction. We cannot build initiatives without a clear direction and a clear roadmap. And the number one thing that each of us needs to do, I mean, I've seen this throughout my experience of over 15 years, starting and running initiatives and growing initiatives. I've seen it. You definitely need a theory of change. Do not feel that a theory of change is a complex thing. It is part of the journey. In fact, if you have the theory of change, then your journey will be made easier because you will have clearly mapped out. So oftentimes, reflect journey, but it's make sure that you give it a week, and then uh, uh, uh,
Hi everyone, sorry about the connection issues. It happens, but definitely would get our presenter back with us very soon. And yes, definitely he would share his LinkedIn details with everyone who would like to contact him, and also would share the slides as well. So I really hoped that he would attend to one sample, that we have of someone's TOC, but I've not seen any in the chat so far. But if you are working on that, please let me know in the chat and we'll just give a little time for it to wrap up. And when his connection comes on, we would attend to it. And it's quite surprising that the connection is having a little bit of issues, because it's unlike it before. It's not meant to be this way, because it's connecting from a city. But we just trust that everything is going to work out well. So if you have your TOC ready, please put it in the chat. We would like to address it while on the call. Hi Solomon, can you hear me? Are you with us now? Okay, it seems like he's not with us yet. Hi Solomon.
I think I'll just take off
Okay, okay. There's no problem. That was a wonderful presentation,
And
and we are
yeah,
very, very grateful.
hello.
And we are also very
Yes, I'm here.
thankful that the internet didn't get messy towards the towards the middle, and it only got a bit messy towards the end. So we got all the information, even though we would have really loved you to analyze one of the sample theory of change that will be created, or would have loved to create right on this call, and you'd analyze it and give us your insights. We wish that would have happened, but still, we are glad we have you, and you're able to walk us through this process of creating our own um, guiding theory of change. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for such an informative webinar, and we'll definitely keep in touch. And because of how the webinar ended, definitely if you have your theory of change, you can send it to me, and I'll forward it to Solomon, and copy you in an email. So he would address it personally. We would have wanted to do it as a team, but understanding the circumstances, we can do that through email. So if you have any sample that you want him to look through, share with me, and I'll write an email and connect you to their email so he would attend to it. Yes, and if we have more than one theory of change, even more interesting, at least we get to do it as a group through the email. So thank you all so much for attending today's webinar. I really hope. Hi, Solomon, are you able to just say
Yes,
a final closing remark? Great. Thank you.
yes, I'm here. Sorry for the issues again. Um, I mean, I'm happy to review anything. Um, I'm happy to review anything once it's shared with me. So I'll be excited to do that. I mean, I know that we've kind of run out of time, but again, I would have loved to respond to any of the questions. But if we have any questions, please feel free to share them with Success, and I'll be able to respond to them. But again, leaders, please make sure that a theory of change is a tool that you have with you, and that you have to define your roadmap to the change that you want to create. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Solomon. We are so grateful for this presentation. And really, everyone who wants to know, this is not Mr. Solomon's first time with us on this academy. He was with us last year as well, and he had such an interesting presentation as well. And that's why I would always want to keep seeing him. So thank you so much. For next week, our webinar would be on Wednesday, and it's a combined focus webinar on SWOT analysis. So after creating your TOC, you need to address it using the SWOT analysis and know where your strengths, your weakness, your opportunities, and your threats are, and know how to properly analyze them. So if you are here, please know that you should be in the next webinar on Wednesday, same time. I would communicate if there are any changes on the WhatsApp groups. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Solomon. Bye, everyone.